Looking to connect to other Overwatch players just like you? Be in the know with the latest news around the game and the league? You're in the right place. Welcome to Overwatch Recall, connecting you with Overwatch podcasts. With your host, Glenn Totemly Drunk Smitty.
Welcome back to Overwatch Recall, connecting you with Overwatch podcasts and Overwatch content creators. I am your host, Glenn Tumbly Drunk Smitty, and today I'm sitting down with two members of Broverwatch. One to be the main host, Adam, and I'm also joined by Luke, who does some esports journalism on their website. So we got a couple of different bases to kind of cover here with this particular interview, which is kind of like a fresh take in regard to that, because usually, guys, like, I am just sitting down and chatting with one person, and now we have now grown into three. So thank you so much for taking some time out to sit down with me to talk a little bit more about this passion project that you guys both have going on. So I greatly appreciate that.
Thanks for having us. I appreciate it.
Yes, thank you.
So, usually when we start things off, I like to learn a little bit more about the creators themselves, more so when it comes to just their overall background with gaming. So, usually I act like, where it all began and then transition to, like, the Blizzard side of gaming. So, Adam, let's start with you. I know, like, pre-show you were trying to think back and pinpoint exactly when this all happened. So, take me through your gaming background leading up and, preceding what is currently going on with the Blizzard franchises.
Yeah, sure. Well, as far as I can think back, I've always been interested and intrigued by the whole gaming industry kind of thing. I always, looked forward to going over to friends' houses, first of all, to, hang out with my friends, but also they had gaming systems, so I'd go over and play them. And it wasn't until I was probably 7 that I got my first Xbox, the original Xbox, and that was a big deal. And it kind of the first day I played that, it kind of changed my entire life going forward. It sounds pretty extreme, but video games have been a big part of my life for a long time now since then. But I was kind of more into single player games, and I still am, but Overwatch, when it came out, it was kind of the first big multiplayer focused game that really took over my life a little bit. And I've played other Blizzard games. I played Hearthstone for a while. I dipped my toes into WoW a little bit, but Overwatch is the first one that really, took me, I guess, is the best way to put it.
And Luke, what about you? Where's your gaming background starting from?
Well, the earliest thing I can remember is back way back when the PlayStation 1 was still hot and new, and I got that for my as a Christmas gift from my parents. So I had only one game on it, and it was Crash Bandicoot 3, I believe. And every time after school, I just sat down and just played the absolute crap out of it. And I loved it a lot. And I actually kept on playing that for years and years and years until I got a handy-down PlayStation 2 from my older brother. And it had games like, GTA San Andreas and all these other, classics from the PS2. And I started playing that every time. And I kind of started, getting into the PlayStation cycle. I was a real big PlayStation fanboy. And when I finally came down to buying the PlayStation 3, I was just so excited. I kind of stayed the PlayStation fanboy all the way up until 2 years ago, when not 2 years ago, last year, when I finally had enough money to buy a PC, because I already had Overwatch on my PlayStation and I liked it a lot, but I wanted to try it out on PC because I started to get into the pro scene a bit, and I wanted to play on the same platform and see how good I could be as the pros are doing. So I got money and kind of convinced my parents at the time, so, yo, can you lend me some money so I can get some good PCs going? So yeah, I got that, and I got Overwatch, and I kind of been hooked ever since, so to say. And yeah, on the Blizzard part wise, I've always been a big WoW fan. I had before this PC, I had a very slow PC that could barely run WoW at like 20 FPS, but I've been playing WoW since 2011 as well on the side. I was very young when I first saw that. I was always behind my brother. He was in a raiding guild and he was very good. And I don't know, like 9, 10 years old, and like Wrath of the Lich King days. And I saw him running Ice Crown Citadel with his gold and talking to everyone and everyone like all over Europe, like 25-man raids, and I was just intrigued by that. So when I got my hands on WoW myself, I was just so happy to play it, and because I kind of became Blizzard fanboy as well. After that, I just picked up Overwatch because it was a Blizzard game, as it goes. So that's kind of where I'm at now, so to say.
Yeah, for me, like it's really crazy when you think of Overwatch being for a lot of people like their first experience in a first person shooter. And a lot of that just comes to the fact because like this is released by Blizzard, so the interest
Yes.
in what they're doing is very high, and you got that interesting mix of not only is it an FPS game, but it also kind of like blends into like the MOBA type of game because you have all of these different unique abilities and heroes, which is just fantastic. But looking at what you guys are currently doing, Adam, you currently host Broverwatch. Luke, you primarily work on the website, kind of like posting articles and whatnot. So is there anything like right now that you're kind of working on in regards to the esports scene? Maybe like, relevant things to the Overwatch League, or maybe like contenders coverage, because, right now, like, we have contenders going on in like 7 different regions, so there's a lot to kind of look at there.
As far as the podcast goes, we're kind of just probably gonna. I mean, we cover weekly things, so we like cover the past week in Overwatch League news and stuff like that. So pretty much anything that's been happening or is coming up, we'll talk about on the podcast. But I know a bunch of the writers, Luke included, are coming up with a big kind of conglomerate article about all of the expansion teams. So if Luke wants to talk about that a bit.
Yeah, no, we as a team are gonna work after the DC announcements. We will be working on a big article and analyzing all the players and all the teams going into season 2, so that people kind of know what to expect going into season 2, and kind of giving our opinions and our ratings of the players of certain teams, and make a kind of a prediction of what will happen. And for myself, I have started writing an article about the Vancouver Titans because they just got announced, and I kind of want to run the hype train a little bit, and I feel like I could write a good article about this team because I've been following the team Runaway since like January 2017, like end of Apex Season 1, beginning of Apex Season 2. So yeah, I've always been a passionate fan of them, and now them being in Overwatch League, I felt it is the right time to write a good in-depth article about the roster, about their history, and about the branding of Vancouver. So I hope to have that finished by the end of the week, and that's kind of what's going on right now on the writer part, I guess.
What's really crazy to me is at least on my Overwatch League podcast, all 3 of the hosts have been following Runaway basically since inception. So Luke, like, I'm just curious, like, now that Runaway is basically fielding an entirely new lineup over in Contenders Korea, are you still following the team as they basically start fresh?
Yeah, no, of course. Runaway is like Runaway in Overwatch. It's like a what. It doesn't matter what the roster is. Like during the past almost 2 years, the roster has changed a lot, apart from a few core members. But because of the passion that they have, no matter whose players they're in, because Runner and Flowervin have been with the team the whole time, and the team itself and the brand that they represent has not changed. So when all the new players finally, or the old players finally went off to the Overwatch League, and the new players came in, I feel like there's not a lot of all the Runaway fans still will heavily support Runaway, as I've because every like Runaway fan I talk to still follow the new roster, and myself included as well. It's like the team itself has just grown so much that you just have love for the team and love for the brand, and not for a specific player. So yeah, I think I think Runaway will still be very popular in contenders this season.
Yeah, 100%. And like that brand in itself, with the pink and blue, which kind of maybe got a little stolen from underneath them. Not like I don't think
Unlucky.
I don't think that Vancouver would have stuck with that
No.
color scheme, but like when the Spark like released their branding and I saw the colors, I'm like, man, why you gotta kick me while I'm down? Well, like we were still like on the outside looking in, basically just waiting for the announcements to come from the Titans.
Yeah. I mean, like, I'm happy that there is a team in Overwatch League that has this brand name, because it's just an amazing branding,
Yeah.
Like, it's just cool. And, the Vancouver, there was always a very slim chance that they were actually going to do it, because we know they're, like, associated with the Canucks franchise.
Mhm.
So, they want to represent the city, they want to represent the franchise itself. So the chance was slim, but we're just, at least for me, and I think for a lot of fans, we're just happy that the roster is in, and the roster is in together, and the coaching staff is there, So, actually, you could also say like the roster's in, and the colors, the branding also made it to Overwatch League. So I'm happy either way.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just crazy that we get to continue this journey with them to see whether like the path that they're on is going to play out similarly in the Overwatch League, because like following Runaway, like there were a lot of times where they would either make very deep runs in Apex, or they were kind of on the bottom of their groups, and they come back and basically have like this whole redemption arc in the following season.
Mm-hmm.
So I am very curious to see how exactly they're going to fare in the Overwatch League. So that's going to be one of the bigger storylines to watch for me personally, just because I am also someone that has followed them for such a long time. Heck, I even have pink and blue hair right now to support them in contenders. And some people just confuse it with the Spark now, but that's besides the point.
I mean, I got their jersey. I actually bought the jersey through Korean Body last like half a year ago, and it's actually super cheap and very good quality, and I love it. But it's like it's the first thing I ever bought from an esports team, and it's from Runaway. It's crazy.
That's fantastic. Well, Adam, taking a look at Broverwatch, I know you guys kind of started at the tail end of Overwatch League Stage 1.
Yeah.
Like, did you guys have other stuff going on before that, or were you just trying to get a feel for maybe like some of the content that was out there, or just trying to make sure that you guys had enough stuff to talk about? So maybe like Stage 1 might have been the best time to start in regards to having some already like established type of storylines, or something like that.
Well, Calder and I actually had started a non-Overwatch League podcast around September of 2017. It was right near the end of September, and we started a non-Overwatch League podcast. But just because we'd always wanted to start a podcast, but we didn't know what to do it about, so we just made it about nothing, and we'd just talk about nothing for an hour. But surprise, surprise, not many people listened to it. So we kind of just stopped doing that, but we still wanted to do the podcasting stuff. And it was actually around the time that we started that other podcast that Calder actually like bought Overwatch, and he immediately like loved the game. I'd been playing it since launch, and then I told him that the Overwatch League was starting up, and he was like, that's awesome, because he's super into sports. So he's like, now this is like watching sports, except it's a game that I play. And we both just got super excited about Overwatch League. We didn't even think about having an Overwatch League podcast until like halfway through Stage 1, and we were like, let's just do it. But we figured we'd wait till the end of Stage 1, because starting like Stage 1 week 3 would have been a bit weird. So we thought having our premiere episode kind of be a Stage 1 wrap up would be a pretty good way to go. And that's why we waited so long, just because we didn't even really think about it till then.
Gotcha. Okay, so when we think about the Overwatch League, obviously there are so many different kind of like avenues that you guys can do content creation. In this case, not only do you have the podcast, but you also have a lot of esports journalism going on the website. So, what is it about the Overwatch League that has like attracted you guys to produce these various like media content out there?
Well, for Calder and I, at least, we obviously we love the game, so it's really easy to create content around something that you're really passionate about. So that's why we chose it. But like Overwatch League specific, it's just I feel like I've always been interested in esports. He's always been interested in sports, and but there's something about the Overwatch League that kind of has a really like, even though it has its missteps, it's a very clean professional league. And for its first season, it was like incredibly impressive as far as professionalism and production and viewership goes for a first season of a league. So the reason we kind of were so drawn towards it was because it was something that we felt we knew about, but also other people would be interested. We figured people would be grasping for as much Overwatch League content as they could get, and if we could provide one more avenue for it, then that would be great. And as far as the journalism goes, as far as the website goes, we only started that like recently, but we started it because we thought we wanted one more avenue to kind of spread the Overwatch League content we were producing. But Calder had this big idea for providing up and coming esports writers with a platform, because it's sometimes hard to get your foot in the door. So we figured if people want to write on this website, just get some work on their resume, then perhaps one day they could get a paying job, actually writing for ESPN or something like that, and that would be awesome.
Yeah, when it comes to content creation, a majority of the time, what we do is basically a labor of love. We're not asking for handouts or money or anything like that. I mean, some people might have like a Patreon to try to cover like hosting or things like that. But like the overall passion that I get, like, just talking to everyone, because we all kind of come from similar backgrounds. Like that passion is just palpable. Like you can feel it whenever you're sitting down and actually chatting about something that everyone kind of has like the same viewpoints on, but like we all kind of see things from a different perspective as well. So I think that's awesome that you guys are giving people just another avenue, another platform to maybe make a name for themselves, or just bring some more viewership to, whether it's like the Overwatch League, or just even bringing traffic to the website. That's another way. Like, hey, like, not only can you find some of our traditional content on there just via our YouTube, but if you stick around, you could also learn more about, one of the new expansions that was just announced, or see like who's been like popping off in contenders or things like that. So that is awesome. So
True.
With that being said, I know you guys are primarily on YouTube. I'm assuming like that's where you initially began with this initial podcast before branching out into the Overwatch League sides of things. At what point did you guys start to transition to being on some of the podcatchers like iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, things like that?
It was kind of almost for like the Broverwatch, it was kind of an immediate thing, because we when we did our other podcast that nobody listened to, we kind of we like kind of dabbled in trying to figure it out, like how to branch out to those other places. So we kind of already had that in our pockets when we started the Broverwatch. So pretty much immediately we figured, hey, some people may want to watch it on YouTube, and we have some visual parts of our podcast, but we also figured there's probably some people out there that just want to listen. So yeah, we kind of figured we'd go out to that, and we try to make it as appealing to just audio listeners as possible, which can be tough when Calder and I are in a Discord call and we can see each other, and we do visual gags sometimes, so it's sometimes tough, but yeah, we figured it's if there's a way to reach a broader audience, then we may as well do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've even seen like some more like streaming services start to branch out when it comes to the content that they're covering. So like, recently, like in regards to like podcasting, like Spotify started to have like a podcast like channel basically, or a way to just submit your content. And I know there's some other services like that are also starting to kind of like introduce that. And it's really amazing like how much Spotify in the podcast scene is kind of like blown up already. So like whenever I kind of like look at the stats, not that I'm never driven by numbers or anything, but I'm just curious to see like, okay, like how big of a slice of this pie is Spotify going to be? Because when I first heard about it, I just felt like, okay, like a lot of people just listen to music on Spotify, though. How many people are actually going to be using it to listen to podcasts? And to my surprise, like there is a very healthy chunk of like listeners just specifically out of Spotify, which was just mind-boggling to me. So I was so enthused to see that. But Luke, I want to talk a little bit more about your writing as like an esports journalist. So wait, when did you first like start your venture into writing? Like what was your aspiration to sit down and really dive into the esports side of things?
Well, like writing itself or journalism itself, people around me have been telling me for years that I was always, that writing or putting my thoughts to paper was always like something I excelled at, but I never really took it seriously or put it on the side until I had some free time some more free time about 3 months ago. My college was a bit, slowing down, so I had some free time on my hands, and I was always like a heavy user of the competitive Overwatch subreddit, and at the time I was just reading so many messages and a lot of subjective stuff was posted there, and I just thought like, that arguments that were giving and stuff that was putting out there was not like I felt like I could add add to the discussion, but I didn't really want to do through comments and stuff. It was like, okay, if I'm gonna do this, I'm just gonna pick topics, write about it, and have discussions. So I didn't have a platform back then, so I just sat in the bus one day and I just went on my phone and just wrote down a couple of topics I wanted to talk about. And later that week and a week afterwards, I posted about, I think, 2 things on Reddit, or I posted 2 articles on Reddit because why not? And it got some mixed reception, good reception, but I felt like I really liked what I did, and I kind of had like a vindicated feeling by reading comments, people having discussion about what I wrote. So I kind of became more passionate because of that, and kind of became more passionate about what I wanted to write and what I wanted to do. After that, there was a announcement or a post on the subreddit from the Broverwatch that they were looking for content creators, and I was like, well, that kind of fits right in my alley because I just started out, and I was like, well, sure. So I responded to that, and a little bit later, I came into the Discord, and I think 1 or 2 weeks later, I posted my first article on their website, and it was really fun, working with the team and doing research for the articles and giving my opinion on stuff and what I wrote. I really enjoyed it, and because of that, that really pushes me as a writer or a content creator. I wouldn't really call myself a journalist yet because I don't feel like I deserve the title, because most of my articles have been very, opinionated, because that's kind of what I like to write an opinionated piece and have discussion about it. But it's a lot. It gives a real good boost, to produce more content, to see that people like the content and give it, and discuss what you are doing. So that's kind of where I am, where I am now at the moment. So um, yeah, I don't really know what else to say about it.
So lately, like right now we're obviously in the off season of the Overwatch League. So in these recent months, post season 1 of the Overwatch League, have you started to like expand some of the things that you are writing on, like whether it's contenders or maybe stuff that is currently going on within the game itself?
Well, because it's postseason, as you said, like I started writing in the post. I haven't written yet, which I'm really excited for to do when season 2 actually starts. But like most of my articles have been very, as I said, very like opinionated pieces about topics that are talked about in the community, and I have always followed contenders already. I followed Apex. I followed contenders when it came out in 2017 and all throughout the past year. And I think it was 2 weeks ago, I posted a recap for the first week of EU contenders. And I really like to do that, analyze the matches and, give the people who couldn't watch like a small recap of the score and what happened in like one paragraph. And so, yeah, that's kind of why I'm trying to expand right now until the season 2 starts, because, you got to kind of fill the content.
Mm-hmm. I was just going to say, if I could add to that, like one of the other big reasons that Calder and I wanted to start the website was because, as big of fans as we are, we can't, cover everything on the podcast. So we made an effort to, bring on some people who were much more knowledgeable on things like contenders in, so that, we had a more broad, like expanse of like articles and content that could, cover tons of different parts about the Overwatch League and not just, the games. Because I know once the season ended, we were kind of at a loss of like what the podcast would even be about. And luckily there were way too many leaks to cover, so we weren't short on content. But there was like a 2 or 3 week span where we just didn't know what to do. So having Luke and a couple of our other writers, know a lot about contenders and other things really, it really adds some depth and some breadth to the to our content.
Yeah, for me, like, Luke brought up hot community topics, and that is a segment that I introduced on Heroes Never Die, and that's obviously, like, one of my favorite segments that we've ever done on that particular show. So, it kind of, like, opens up the door to, like, so many different potential, like, topics that you could discuss.
Yeah, true.
So whether it is something like the elite brig movement, like, would probably be the first thing that comes to mind right now, and how even there's a contender's China player who's named Elite Brig, or you have like XQC on a budget in South America.
So ridiculous.
Like I just love where people are taking things, but like right now a lot of discussion has kind of revolved around Seagull's state of Overwatch. That whole YouTube video, and shortly after that, Jane and Surefor and Seagull all sat down to kind of discuss it. During Jane's Twitch channel when he was streaming and all of that. But Luke, is there anything going on right now that whether it's just a big community topic or maybe something that's a bit more controversial that you would like to dive into? Like, say, I'll use an example. So right now, if you look at some of the PTR changes, they are changing Brigitte a little bit. They're removing the majority of the damage from her shield bash, so it definitely directly impacts her shield bash, whip shot, and like flail combination that basically deletes low HP heroes in favor of, say, providing more healing. And how that is going to correlate to the meta that we're in right now, because as you guys have all seen, we are in the midst of triple tank, triple support in the vast majority of competitive
Yeah.
games, and how exactly the Brigida changes are only going to like strengthen the longevity of and survivability of that specific team composition. Because a lot of people I talk to are just like, okay, like maybe this is going to do something, and I'm just like, no, absolutely not. It's only going to further things. So, is there anything that really comes to mind that you're wanting to kind of like dive into a little bit deeper when it comes to your coverage?
Well, to kind of like second what you're saying here on PTR changes, like I always love to talk about with people and discuss like how to make the state of the game better, and people always immediately point the finger at Brigitte, because it's like, oh, when she came in the game, it all went wrong, and I can't play Tracer Genji anymore. It's like it's obvious, and it's very like she's definitely part of it. But to me, the real character that has to be taken a look at is Diva, because Diva has been meta for as long as, well, I think after Beyblade, which was what, 2 years ago.
Yeah.
right when that got nerfed, and Dive kind of started to get in, like right after Apex Season 1, when MVs won with Quad Tank and all that, beautiful stuff back then, because back then it was new and everyone loved it. But right when Dive kind of picked off during like January 2017 or something, Diva has basically been a must pick all of the time. And I feel like now in the GOATS comp, it's even more important, because Diva is just, as said by many, she is so versatile and she can do so much. And I feel like if you want to really tackle GOATs, I think Brigitte is fine right now. You can have her as a healer. She still does damage and she still does stuns. But I think the way she is after the changes is fine, because you can then run her in double support comps. But Diva is the real hero that we should look at, because imagine that the defense matrix was kind of tuned, right? That you can't use it while boosting, or can't use it while you do your rockets, or it has like a shorter range or something. That provides, for example, like an Ana to have a bigger opportunity to land their nades. And if you land a big fat nade on the GOATS comp, it's just bye GOATs. They're just dead because all their healing is gone. And that's just a small thing, but I think Diva really is overlooked in how when people think about how to change the GOATS comp. But that's like, I always think that's very interesting to talk about with people on how to change the game for the better. So I don't know if you guys have any thoughts on that on particular.
I mean, as far as Diva goes, I think one of the reasons that like people kind of overlook her is because she's played by a lot of people, so a lot of people don't want her to get nerfed because she is
so is Mercy
favored. yeah, that's true.
And then that happened.
Yeah.
But Mercy was hated by the pro scene, and Diva is, well, not.
Yeah. And I know that recently in a dev update that Jeff said Mercy's being buffed, and everyone was like, what? And then it was like, but it's just her Valk healing. Her Valk healing's better. And everyone's like, okay, that's not the worst thing ever. But yeah, I know there would probably be somewhat of an immediate outcry by kind of more casual players, I guess, if Diva got nerfed. But I think it would probably last for, it doesn't even need to be a nerf, it just needs to be an adjustment, because
for real, true.
She's not overpowered, she's just too she's
good
in
everything.
Most scenarios. Yeah,
for me, like when I look at Brigida, I honestly didn't really have a problem with her kit initially. Like I like the shield bash change that they're doing to make it so Brigida herself just isn't like the scare tactic to prevent people from playing dive heroes. But like I didn't like the fact that they are basically buffing her as a healer. I would have rather them taken the approach of lessening the armor gain that you get from rally, because when you have someone like Jonak who has a god amount of HP and armor collectively,
Yeah.
you can just you can basically be unkillable on Zenyatta.
Or just have it disappear after like a certain amount of time, you know?
Mhm.
You rally, you get your armor for like 20-30 seconds, and after that it just goes, you know, it's like you just lose armor over a certain amount of time until it's then gone. It's just but I think you made a really good point there, yeah.
So let's go ahead and focus a little bit on, just the Overwatch League and the esports scene as a whole, because there is something about contenders that I do definitely want to touch up on, which would be an awesome thing to write about in regards to a future article for you, Luke, in regards to the rosters being soft region locked. But first, let's talk about some recent happenings with the Overwatch League. So there was a recent controversy, I think is the best way to put it, with the Los Angeles Gladiators, who basically
Oh no.
freaked everyone the hell out. So they basically they went on Twitter and they basically posted like this little video, and they were basically like say goodbye to the Finnish support duo of Shaz and Big Goose. And everyone lost their minds. Everyone was freaking out. If you're on the competitive Overwatch subreddit, everyone is, the sky is falling, what the heck is going on? And everyone's just like, well, why would they release what was arguably their most consistent line? This doesn't make any sense. And then, there's this 30-minute period where everyone is just stewing in all of these emotions, most of which are out of anger or negative. And people are tweeting at the Gladiators,
Apparently the Gladiators lost a lot of followers in that 30 minutes, apparently.
I've heard that.
But so 30 minutes pass by, and they're like, now it's a Finnish trio, because they did sign...
get you, David.
They did sign another
Lol.
former Team Giganti support player. And, there are people on two sides of this. There was one, like, the LA Gladiators fan who's like, how could you do that to me? Like, all the reverse sweeps in the first season that, we ended up being on the wrong side of was hard enough, and then you guys go out and do this. And then you have the other people who are just like, okay, like, there's been a lot of discussion about how people are managing their social medias, whether it was with the Overwatch League, whether it's the players, whether it's team managers in the Path to Pro scene, like the whole Toronto esports shenanigans that went down, and them trying to call out the Defiant, which was... that was just a major facepalm. But people, like, the other side of the coin is people are like you MFers, like, you guys pulled this off. Like, it was a giant debate, and, some people were applauding the approach that they took, but, in those 30 minutes, like, I have never, well, at least since Siegel's video, I have never seen competitive Overwatch and just some of the Discord servers related to Overwatch blew up in that fashion. So I was just curious, like, where you guys kind of, like, sat in regards to the sides into that argument and how they went about doing this roster reveal.
I'll say this. I think if any team could get away with it, I think it's the Gladiators, especially since, they're really well known for their Kings Road debate. It was kind of just a roster version of that, where they were like, look over here, these two players are leaving, and it's like, psych, here's this guy over here, and he's gonna snipe you all, haha. But like, yeah, it was a bit of a dick move, I guess. It was a bit of a jerk move, but I think it was all in good fun. If they waited like a day, I think it would have been a little too far, but 30 minutes, I think it's no big deal.
Well, to me, I was fortunate and lucky enough that I didn't check my Twitter in the 30 minutes between the announcement and the second announcement. So when I actually checked my Twitter, I just saw both tweets under each other. I was like, well, this is kind of weird. And then I just saw the time in between. I was like, oh, okay, PR tried something, fine. But so for me, it wasn't that big of a deal because I didn't really have direct impact to it because, I didn't see it when it was happening. But when I read the feedback, people or the feedback or the comments on the Reddits or Twitter, and people are like hardcore hating, and I'm like, come on, guys, it's like a little thing. Like their PR, their marketing team, they thought like, oh, we could do this. This is probably a good idea, and it's just like one decision made. Like it doesn't define anything that they're doing or who they are. It's just one decision. It didn't really work out. It was kind of a 50-50. To me, it's just not that big of a deal in general. It's a risky move, and that's about it for me. To be honest.
Yeah, what I will say to wrap up that bit is, at the end of the day, the attention they got for a roster sign-in was magnified tenfold compared to just flat out announcing, Reaper from Team Gigante. So like there was good and also bad, but like it definitely got everyone buzzing about a new sign-in.
Yeah.
But you have to think, is all the buzz and all the attention about the way they announced it or about the player they announced?
Right.
That's a really good point.
You want it to be about the player you announce. This is, and rightfully so, because Reaper is a scary good pickup for them, and I feel like he has just been flown under the radar. So I think if you even ask people now, remember the Gladiators thing? Or like imagine asking people in like a couple months, and remember when the Gladiators did that? It's like, yeah, the whole announcement. I think half the people might not even like know from the top of their head who they announced, because the whole attention, all the attention went to the way they announced it, which is kind of unfortunate for Reaper. And I don't think the marketing team didn't really think that would happen. But yeah.
Yeah, I saw a lot more people say, "Oh, silly gladiators, that was funny," and not anything actually about Reaper. But like,
yeah, right.
If I'm being fully honest with you, the reason earlier that I didn't specifically say Reaper was because I forgot who they had announced, because no one's really even talked about it. They've just been talking about the big debate.
There you go.
So I guess in that way it was very ineffective, because they should have been like, look at this great player pickup we have, and instead of, haha, we got you. So I don't know.
It's not. That wasn't it, Chief.
So it wasn't a big deal, but it wasn't effective.
Well, moving on, yesterday was basically like deadline date for the Overwatch League teams who have, 8 players signed.
Yes.
And, we even got another franchise reveal, this one out of Vancouver. And lo and behold, the big mystery behind this team is, in fact, Runaway is the Vancouver Overwatch League franchise, and they will be known as
Who would have thought?
the Vancouver Titans.
The creepy airport paparazzi photos were real.
So,
I laughed so hard.
So, my only comment about that is, why are people so intrusive?
I mean,
very creepy.
Like we all knew, right? Like everyone, like it's been long rumored, and like when you see like all of these signings happening, and you basically knew all of Runaway was signed. There was only one location that Runaway could have gone to, and sure enough, it was Vancouver Titans. Now, I was a little disappointed that I'm not going to get the hashtag for Vancougars, because I was hoping for Cougars to be the franchise name. But Vancouver did pick up Runaway, and then they also signed Repel from Element Mystics, who is, their flex support. So,
yes.
Some of us have been following Runaway for quite some time, so I'm just curious as to what you guys felt about the overall brand reveal and how you think Runaway are going to fare in the Overwatch League in their new venture, and maybe, going up against some of the top competition out there.
You want to go first?
Yeah. Oh, sure. As far as brand reveal goes, I think it was the most effective brand reveal yet.
Yes.
It was the best production. They really delved into each player. They kind of showed their personalities a lot to those who wouldn't know. They had a really interesting trailer. Obviously, it was cool that they were at the Vancouver Canucks game, but it was unfortunate seeing like each of them like laugh awkwardly as everyone in the stadium doesn't really cheer because they don't know what's happening because they're all like middle-aged guys who just brought their girlfriends to this hockey game and don't know what's going on. But apart from that, I think it was the best reveal, and I think the colors are really good because we don't have much green in the Overwatch League, and the Titans is a really cool thing. I know it was leaked a bit beforehand, but I think they cleaned up the logo a bit and like
Yeah.
slightly changed the colors, so that was nice. I think it's a lot cleaner now. As far as how they'll do in the Overwatch League, either best team in their Overwatch League, they're gonna disappoint. I don't know. I feel like they might disappoint just because there's such high expectations. Even if they do well, I feel like they're not going to do as well as people think they might. And that's a sad thing to say. I don't want to be that guy. But I don't know. It's kind of scary for them because they even said in the roster reveal that there's so much pressure because they already have such a big fan base. So.
Well, for me, I'm like talking about the brand reveal because there was a lot of discussion on Reddit and on Twitter about the way the Titans like revealed their brand, or not really the way how they did it, but like where they did it. At the Canucks game during like halftime or whatever. I don't know. Like people were saying like, why would you do it at a hockey game? No one there cares, and it's probably awkward and all. And although that might be true, I think revealing a new franchise in a city at a event that's not really suited for it can either go it can go two ways. Well, first way, it's like super awkward and no one cares, and you might even get bad reactions from the crowd. But the thing was that the way they put it together, at least for the stream, that you didn't really catch anything of it. Sure, they were kind of like standing there, waving a bit awkwardly, but
Yeah.
I've not seen anything, that's kind of when you watch Apex, and they are in front of a crowd, and the team gets introduced in front of a crowd, who loves esports. They also they do the same thing. It's not something like special or different, but in my opinion, I think the way they did it is actually really good. They did it at a Canucks game, so it's the same franchise, which will probably, people don't notice, but even if there's one person in the stadium, or two or three or five, that now think like, hey, this looks cool, maybe I'll check it out, and he Googles the Overwatch League, Googles Vancouver Titans, and becomes new fans, then it can only be a win, for the team itself. And that's why I think they kind of did it this way. They didn't really cater to the public in the stadium. They kind of they only reason they did it there was because they are partnered with the hockey team that's located there. Overall I thought the review was really good. The videos were typical Runaway style. You have this like family feeling. Everyone introduces themselves. Nice production. So that was all good. And on how they would do in season 2, like in my opinion, I'm very positive. I think they'll make playoffs. I think they can compete with the best teams in the league because they have such a good track record against players, who are or who have already played in Overwatch League Season 1. They faced them in Apex, like the KDP's London Spitfire roster. They faced them. They have faced the Seoul Dynasty roster. They faced them in Apex. Like, they have so much experience in their team, and they have been at the top of their game for almost 2 years in 3, 4, 5 different metas. I think they will do very well, and I think they will do playoffs. I don't know if they'll win it, but I think they will definitely make playoffs, and I'm very happy if they do.
Yeah, Runaway is just one of these teams that have kind of stood the test of time. A lot of teams either made drastic changes, and maybe they just weren't able to reach the same pinnacle that they were at before. But at the end of the day, like, one of the storylines to follow is how in season 1 there were certain franchises that basically went out and signed an entire roster or built, their roster around like a core 4 or 5 members of a certain team. And in more situations than not in Season 1, that did not work out so great. Now, London would be the exception to this, because they did sign Kalandu Panthera. They also had GC Busan, who had basically royal roaded in Apex, which was astronomical. That's probably never going to be done again. When it, contenders in like their first qualification, but like it wasn't like an easy road for London to get to the championship. They had a lot of issues early on trying to figure out, what the best team would be to field, on the, in play basically. And then eventually they cut down their roster. They were down to like 7 players, and then it was just fine tuning from that point on. And then eventually, they got their path to the championship, and then they took it. So, as someone that followed Lunatic High for a long time as well in the Korean scene, after seeing the Dynasty kind of hard flop in Season 1, it definitely makes me feel like I have to temper my expectations, regardless of if I'm a super fan or not.
Well, like this point has been made a lot, right? That picking up a pre-established roster, full roster, does not guarantee success. But because it has so much, because we had the Seoul Dynasty with Fuel, we had Outlaws who were they were not really full roster, and they were kind of middle. I think they performed at their standards, but mainly the biggest arguments are Fuel and the Seoul Dynasty, right? And then Spitfire, who barely made playoffs, Spitfire throughout stage 2 or 3. But I feel like if you look at the teams in detail, right, you look at Fuel and Dynasty, because those are like the most popular teams to look at in this argument, there was more going on than just a team that is pre-established, that picked up a full team going into Overwatch League. There was more going on. Fuel had so much drama, so much mismanagement, so much coaching that went wrong. I mean, we had Taimu on Winston, for God's sake. It's like
tank move.
Exactly. It's like you cannot blame Fuel or Envious for you cannot just say it didn't work out. They were a full roster and it didn't bring in talent. Just because of that. I feel like management plays such a big role in Overwatch League. And you could see this with Seoul Dynasty as well, because the storyline in Seoul Dynasty, they weren't really bad. They were middle of the pack to like high like playoff contender. But as we know, and as news came out, that their management as well was just lacking so much. They had so many coaches. Everyone wanted a different thing. They had substitutes. They had different roster every week, and that's also like a thing I want to mention, is that I feel like in Overwatch League Season 1, all the teams were still figuring out how to work with a big roster. Because Fuel, especially you could see again with Fuel and Dynasty, but also with London Spitfire, is that people were just changing around stuff all the time. I feel like just because players asked them if they could play a map, or it's like, he hasn't played in 3 games, so you got to give him 2 maps now. It's like people were just still, or people like the management and the coaching staff was figuring out how to work with a big roster. And I think going into Season 2 now, that these management issues and these roster issues and the subbing, it will really dial down from what it was in Season 1, because people have figured, or management has figured out, coaching has figured out how to do it. We saw during World Cup where we had player specific maps. There was and we saw it during Spitfire, when they cut 4 players because they were so busy, and they had a fixed roster with everyone with a fixed role. And I think one of the teams that did really well from the start was New York, the NYXL. They had a big roster, or at start they had 8 players, I think, but they had 2 players on the bench that were Giannis and Pine, and they had specific roles, and they subbed them in on specific places, and that was it. and their management was good. There was a good, and that's why they were so consistent during the season, while most of the other teams were very, non-consistent. So I think Runaway or the Titans picking up a full roster, people might call it risky in the community, but I think it's a really good choice because Runaway has shown that they can work with substitutes, as they did in Contender Season 2, which they won with Summon Su and Hurek coming in certain maps. Especially Summon Su is really talented, and I'm a big fan of. But they've shown that they can work with a big roster or a larger than 6 roster, and that's why I think Runaway might surprise a lot of people, that you can pick up a pre-established roster if your management and your team behind the players is up to the right standards.
Mm-hmm. And they also have Harsha as well, so I think
Yeah.
he's like really good at player relations and like team management. So I think he's perfect for like the previous Runaway.
Yeah, he's a really likable guy as well.
Yeah.
So,
and as far as like them doing well, like I said, that there's a lot of room for disappointment, but I'm kind of in the middle as far as like there is room for disappointment, obviously, like we saw with Fuel and Dynasty, but yeah, it seems like they have their management in check, and obviously they've got the synergy there, and they have such a good track record. I mean, you could argue that they weren't really trying, but they did beat Team South Korea. So they've been doing significantly, well.
And they're so versatile as well as a team. All these players, they can play so many heroes, so many metas, so many roles. I mean, I'm a fan, right? I'm a big fan, but looking at this objectively, I think you would put 10 for a playoff spot. Put them for a playoff spot at the start of season 2. I think they are deserving of that respect and that title, I would say.
Yeah, any talk of them being disappointing is just so that we don't get our hearts crushed. But looking at it from the outside, definitely they should be doing very well in season 2.
All right, so with that being said, I know we're nearing about an hour on this interview. So I wanted to talk about one more thing in regards to the Path to Pro scene. So next year, for season 1 of 2019, which would be this upcoming season, not the one that's currently going on. Right now we're in 2018 season 3. But Contenders is introducing soft region lock-in for their rosters, which, a lot of people have been pretty adamant about. I'm trying to think how I should best describe it. Like, some people just aren't happy that, say, like a London team is fielded completely of Koreans, things like that. There are instances in Contenders where, maybe the team isn't represented by people of, nearby countries or even continents for that matter. So with teams basically required to field homegrown talent, how do you guys feel that is going to change the landscape of competitive Overwatch moving forward?
I think it's really good because I know I didn't want region locking at all for the Overwatch League because I feel like there's so much more room to like, be creative with a roster and build like a really good roster when there's not region locking. But I think region locking in Contenders is important because it is Path to Pro. The whole point of it is to grow talent from around the world so that they are Overwatch League ready, kind of. So I think region locking is, perfect for Contenders because then you can't have like 7 Korean Contenders teams in Australia or something because that would just be ridiculous. But yeah, I think region locking is good for Contenders. It's and it's not like super like harsh. It's like you said, it's soft region locking. So I don't think it's gonna be a hindrance at all.
Yeah, like I think this change really like shows the direction and the philosophy like Blizzard or the Overwatch team wants to have for their pro scene, because as you said, it wouldn't work for Overwatch League because Overwatch League is a like a worldwide league, right? And teams should be able to recruit talent from all around the world, no matter where your team is based. But Contenders is all about, teams from certain regions fighting, for the title of best team in the region with the talent from that region. So players from that region can evolve and then reach, the Overwatch League in the end. And I think soft region locking is in 2019 is 3 players from a different region on the active roster. I don't know if anyone has that fact ready.
Sounds right.
But if that is true, I'm a big how do you say it? Yeah, no, I agree with you. I really like the change, and I'm really looking forward to seeing, especially a lot of the Pacific, the Pacific teams where there's like 4 Korean teams in there, or in China where there's a lot of Korean players, but also in North America, like Fusion Uni, they gotta get rid of some of their Korean players, or XL2, or I don't know any other team from the top of my head that has a lot of Korean players, but it's really good for the talent from the region to come up and get a stage, because I believe that that being good at Overwatch, like being Korean, doesn't mean you have something that puts you in front of other people from different regions. Like, because you're Korean, you are definitely better than this guy from Europe or this guy from South America. I feel like the Koreans, because of the culture that they have and the esports scene that they have built up, they just have so many more opportunities to show how good they are. So people and scouts first always look at the Korean scene, because there's the highest quality of games and the highest standard of competition. But with the region locking, you will still have high competition in Korea, but you will also have high competition in different regions from the region itself. So I think the change is really good. I really like it, and 3 I think is a very good number.
Yeah,
as well.
and I think this will like do a really good job of kind of like getting rid of the stigma that like 2 players of equal skill, one is Korean, one is European, for example. Let's get the Korean one because Koreans are always better than
exactly.
So yeah, I think it'll be good at growing more talent from more regions.
Yes, especially for South America. If you look at South Contender, like the views it gets is absolutely insane. It gets twice as many views as EU contenders and NA contenders. NA and EU contenders combined is like the South American contenders views if you look on Twitch, because they have different channels. They like the Brazilian stream, the Spanish stream, and also I think broadcast.gg covers it as well.
Yep.
And all that together, like they reach 15, 16K sometimes. Like that's pretty insane for contenders. But the region is so hard overlooked. Like Klaus, the player from Uprising Academy, is the very first player from that region who's gotten out of that region. Like that's insane to me, because the players there are good, but they don't have the environment to really like show it,
And it's worth noting too, in Klaus's case, he is playing with 200 MS.
Yeah, right now that's even more like shows even more of how good he actually is, and how probably good a lot of players, especially from Brazil Gaming House roster, who have now rebranded. I think.
Yeah, they are base.
They parted ways.
Yeah, basically like
exactly.
They Brazil Gaming House and that team basically parted ways, and Brazil Gaming House actually gave the players the contender slot. And go figure. Like they're still together, and they're 2-0 right now after 2 weeks, and they haven't dropped a map.
Of course, of course. But it shows like Klaus popping off in the NA contenders. It shows what a good team around you and a good environment of playing against good opposition in scrims, how that can like elevate your play already. So I'm really happy about the region locks, and I hope that in that way a lot of other regions like Pacific, like Australia, China is getting up there now, which I'm very happy about, and like South America get really more attention, and scouts from OWL or from bigger regions like Korea or EU and NA, look to those other regions as well for talent, because talent is definitely there.
Mhm.
Yeah, and for the most part, it is all untapped. So,
Yeah.
hopefully, with Klaus getting this opportunity, it will open up more eyes to the South American scene, which I would definitely be happy to see. But to wrap things up, Adam and Luke, why don't you guys go ahead and plug your social media, your website, things like that, and just notify our listeners where they can find Broverwatch content, whether it is on podcatchers or on YouTube, things like that.
Sure. Well, you can find us on YouTube at the Broverwatch. If you search the Broverwatch, it should just show up. And then as far as podcatchers go, you can find us on Anchor, Apple Podcasts, Breaker, Castbox, Google Play Music, Google Podcasts, Overcast, Pocket Cast, Radio Public, and of course, Spotify. And if you want to follow us on Instagram and Twitter at the Broverwatch, then we post updates and stuff like that there.
Well, yeah. For me, it's like I kind of only work with Twitter, so my Twitter handle is at Ryuku with double K triple underscore in the end, and that is that's it. I mostly use my Twitter and then the channels through the social media Adam just mentioned.
Mm-hmm. And we retweet each other a lot, so if you find one of us, you can probably find it.
True.
And then the website is thebroverwatch.com. And I guess my Twitter is at I'm a dumb cook, DUMB, and Adam, I'm a dumb cook. Twitter and Instagram.
If you find one of us or the Broverwatch Twitter, you'll probably find everyone else.
Yeah, if you just go to thebroverwatch.com, you can find everything else we just said. So we should have just said it.
It's a nice social tab there.
Good to know. But with that being said, guys, we're going to go ahead and call it here. So, Adam, Luke, thank you so much for taking some time out of your schedule to sit down and talk a little bit about everything that is going on in your Broverwatch network, whether it is the podcast scene or even branching out more into some esports coverage, writing articles, and things like that. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for having us. Appreciate it.
Yes, appreciate it very much.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Overwatch Recall with Glenn Totally Drunk Smitty. For more great content and to stay up to date, visit OWLNshow.com and on Twitter at OWRecall. We'll catch you next time.